This might be the first video on my channel where I have not filmed an intro face-to-face. I'm pretty sure it is, but my allergies are completely running amok in my sinuses at the moment, and I'm just feeling a bit of a hot mess today. But I still wanted to do this VR. So I thought I would just compromise by doing everything top down today. We're just chilling on my floor, and I've got my reading board and my mug of extra spicy masala chai with eggnog, because I'm that person that makes and drinks eggnog all year round because I love it with my heart and my soul. So I'm just enjoying my mug of that, and we're just gonna keep this chill. So this is in response to a tag that was created by Lisa and Peggy Papez, and it is called 21 Tarot Questions, and it's just kind of a really fun hodgepodge mishmash of tarot related questions. And I really just wanted to do this because it's just so fun. I'm going to scooch my tea aside here, and I wrote the prompts down to try to be a little more organized and put together than I actually feel. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, question number 1 is, what is the deck they will pry from your cold, dead hands? That's this one for me. In case you don't know by the back, this is the Way Home Tarot by Bakara Whitner and Autumn Whitehurst. I have featured this deck heavily on my channel. This deck and I have bonded quite a bit over the past few years. This is an independently produced deck. It is still available, at least it was last time I checked. It is heavily pippish. I am using this as part of my Working with the Court Card series. This is one of the decks I feature in that series just because of the heavy underlying elemental element that the courts have in this deck, and I love it for that. And overall, this deck just communicates with me very, very clearly. Speaks my language. It keeps it simple, but it can also go deep when the situation calls for it to do so. And overall, if I could just have one, that's so tough. But if I could just have one, I often say it would be between my Ancient Italian and this one. But lately, it's been this one. So. And again, there's the back. So this is the Way Home Tarot, and it is my Cold Dead Hands deck. Question number 2. What is your guilty pleasure deck? And I struggled with this one a little bit just because I wasn't sure if anything really qualified for that category. But the closest thing I could come up with is the Lightseers. This is the mass market edition. I have edged mine in, I believe this was Aqua Sharpie. And it goes with the box right there. But a lot of commentary I hear about this deck is that it's young, it's hip, it's kind of superficial, maybe, and maybe not taken so seriously. I don't really agree with that myself. I think this deck can be a very, very deep reader. For me, it's a great communicator, almost like having a conversation with a friend. But for me, it's really fun as well. It's a fun kind of reader. And I don't know, for like a guilty pleasure, I think as far as the decks that I have, this one probably qualifies. The one I could think of that I don't have yet, but I really would like that might qualify for this category is the Marseille Cats. That deck is that I'm going to get that deck this year sometime. Not sure when, but that deck is just silly and funny, and I think that one would qualify for this as well. But as far as what I've got, this is the closest thing I could kind of come up with for a guilty pleasure deck. It's just a fun, overall for me, kind of low-key, chit-chatty reader. This is my choice for guilty pleasure deck. Light Sears by Chris Ann. This is mass market, published by Hay House. Question number 3. What is the deck you wish existed? For me personally, and this might seem a little odd, but I wish that these existed in a larger size, which is a bit contradictory because this is a tarot deck with minors that are playing cards. And, you know, typically playing cards are smaller, but here's a great example. The majors are so amazing. And I just wish that they could be a little bit larger. This is the Arcana Tarot playing cards, the light edition and the dark edition. The dark edition, I believe, is unavailable right now, but the light edition is available on Dead on Paper's website. But I just love the majors and the courts. I love the pips too, don't get me wrong. But I would actually even like a majors only edition in larger size, just because they're just so pretty and I love them so much. And the playing card pips are really gorgeous. They are. But like, here's the Queen of Swords. Look at that. So pretty. And there's quite a bit of detail. And it's just like standard playing card size. I just wish that there was some kind of option for these that was a little bit larger, even if it was just a majors only deck. That would be amazing, and I would love that. Question number 4. What deck would you give to a new reader? I think this question is highly dependent on the individual, on the recipient, and their level of sort of schema and background knowledge concerning tarot or other esoteric or occult divination practices. If the person has a bit of a background in astrology and some of the deeper more esoteric or occult practices or philosophies, maybe a Thoth might be a good beginner deck. If the person has a really strong background in numerology, kind of how I did before I came to tarot, maybe a Marseille or a Marseille styled or inspired deck would be a good choice. But if a person has no knowledge of any of those things, kind of whatsoever, I would probably do a standard RWS, and that could be my bias because this is the deck that I learned on. This is the Centennial, published by US Games. But the images are, you know, all over the place. They're familiar. And for me, even though RWS isn't really my system of choice, I still do use this deck. Oftentimes I'll feel called to use it for like even really long periods of time. But even though this really isn't my system of choice overall, I do still think it holds a lot of value, especially for beginners. So again, dependent on the person, but in my opinion, I feel for a beginner, a standard RWS is probably a solid choice. Question number 5, what deck do you want to get along with, but it just never clicked? I will post a photo of that deck here because my copy's in my pass box and I'm getting ready to do something with that and I'm leaving it the way it is right now. And for me, that is the Moonchild Tarot by Danielle Noel. I really, really wanted to get on with that deck. It's lovely as art. It's just beautiful. But as a reader, for me, it just fell completely flat. And I tried multiple different types of readings and approaching it in different ways. And it was the same every single time. So really lovely as art. But for me personally, as a tarot, it just fell kind of flat. So we just never really clicked. And I am moving my copy along. Prompt number 6, what deck do you only keep for the art? And for me, that's the Cariel Visconti with the ginormous alligator mouth box. this deck is a reference deck for me. It's a study deck. It's a deck of appreciation for me as far as tarot, just because it is so historical. But like, look at the size, and some of my cards came bent, and I did get replacements for them, but I haven't put them with the rest of the cards yet. But like these cards, so here's my hand for scale, and the card is still, you know, going beyond my hand, but it's really, really pretty. Here, I'll move that down so you can see a little bit better. But this is US Games, but I keep it as a reference tool, study tool, just to kind of see how these older decks were structured. Let me find one that's not a coin. Here we go. Yeah, it's really pretty, but I don't read with it. It's just one of those decks that I like to keep around for reference. So that is my Cariel Visconti. Keep it for the art as a study deck. Question number 7. What deck did you buy because everyone else did? This really isn't a thing for me, I don't think, overall. Like, I can't recall, you know, hearing about a deck over and over, particularly if it's a new release, over and over, and then just saying I have to have that. I don't know. Maybe I'm being naive, but that really tends to not be a thing for me. But the one that did come to mind, and it's just because I kept seeing random videos of it, like a lot of videos about the same deck at the same time. And it was a time when I was getting acquainted with Hughes Picard Miners. And I just kept hearing about this deck. And then I saw it on Kelly Fitzgerald's channel as well. And it just kind of, it was just another option for me to look at those miners in a different way. And that is the Crystal Tarot by Elisabetta Trevisan. This is a Lo Scarabeo deck. These are Hughes Picard inspired miners. The majors are really beautiful. They are sort of reminiscent of stained glass. Right there. So yeah, this is one I kept hearing about and seeing about, probably because I was researching Picard Miners, and this one did get mentioned as far as sort of being within that style. And so I did pick it up so I could have kind of that other visual in my arsenal for doing that study. But yeah, they are pretty. This is one I would really like to trim all the way down, I think, to the art once I get to know the miners a bit better. I'm getting there. I might actually be ready now. That might be a summer project. But yeah, so this is the closest thing I could think of for that prompt of what did you buy because everyone else did. The Crystal Tarot from Lo Scarabeo. Question number 8, which deck is over your head or just baffles you? Definitely the baffling part applies. I don't think it's over my head. It's just a matter of perspective and thinking about things in a different way. And that is the Universal Worth. This is also Lo Scarabeo. This is another deck with Hughes Picard inspired miners, and I am working on trimming mine down. That's why some are smaller. And the baffling thing for me is the suit switch. And it isn't that I don't understand it. It's just something that I'm still kind of wrapping my head around. The cups and swords are reversed. So cups are air, swords are water. And for me, that just takes a little getting used to. Still not used to it. But I would like to be. As far as like learning systems, I've said before, if I were to dedicate my time to like an actual system, it wouldn't be Thoth or Marseille. I don't think, maybe Marseille, but Thoth probably not. But I would pick this over either of those because it is different, and it is a different perspective, and it would make me go out of my comfort zone a little bit, which is a good thing for me. And the trimming process is helping me get to know these a little bit more. So slightly baffling just because of the suit switch, but we're working on it. So that's the Universal Worth Tarot again, Low Scarabeo. Question number 9. Which deck surprised you? Lately for me, hands down, that has been Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian, published by US Games. I actually just did a reading with this deck and I have 7 of the cards out of the deck still, and I'm leaving them be because I'm doing something with them. But this is mass market, widely available. This deck, first of all, can we say alternate 3 of Swords? Thank you very much, Anna Turian, for including an alternate version of the 3 and 10 of Swords. And thank you to Kelly Fitzgerald because she had a hand in that. And I appreciate that very much. This deck is an amazing storyteller, and it's fantastic in a larger spread. That's kind of what I've been doing with this lately. It has a lot of heart, and it speaks, to me at least, really, really clearly, and it's full of emotion. And it's been a surprise, but it's been a pleasant surprise in that regard. It's really gorgeous, really beautiful. I love this 10 of Pentacles. Look in there, so many of those themes of that card. Like there's, that almost could be like that could be a family, like a current family, or it could also be ancestral lineage and heritage, the steps kind of climbing the ladder. You'll get there eventually. The house, like orchards with the pentacles. This is a beautiful 10 of Pentacles. I love it. Lovely tarot, and it's been an absolute joy to work with. So that is Tarot of the Abyss by Anna Turian, US Games. Question number 10. What deck doesn't really work for you, but you keep it because it's a collectible? This is the one and only prompt that I do not have an answer for. Nothing in my library I feel qualifies for that one. So this is the one I'm going to skip and move on to question 11. What is your favorite gilded deck? I really don't have a ton of tarot that's gilded. Actually, I have a handful, but I definitely have more oracle that qualifies there. But as far as tarot goes, I would say my favorite overall is The Light Visions by James Eads, because this is it's a matte gold. It's really soft matte gold. And it doesn't poke or hurt. So there's the box, there's the back. And just for funsies, we'll just show a few. Because why not? But yeah, I really love the purple and the gold together. They work. This is a fun storytelling deck as well. It's really effective. And directionality as well. I really like this High Priestess an awful lot. I do. Okay. So that's my pick for favorite gilded tarot, and that is The Light Visions by James Eads. Question number 12. What deck do you love but hate the cardstock? Hate is a strong word for me in this department. I'm not too big on cardstock or fussy kind of about what that actually ends up being. But from a functionality standpoint, for me, the Golden Tarot by Liz Dean. This is a mass market deck. It's one of those Chico book decks. And my issue with this is I use it a lot. like a lot. It's one of my go-tos, but there's this going on here. And it doesn't really affect the card at all, but what it does do is really puts a lot of wear and tear on the sides. And it's not like this deck is expensive. It's not. This is one of the cheapest tarots I have in my library. But so I could easily get another copy. But I do kind of, I guess this could also qualify in a deck that I wished it existed. This deck with the cardstock of the Elemental Power Tarot, which is by the same publisher, that is slightly thicker, a little more durable, and it's matte. That would be amazing. And I would probably get 2 or 3 copies of that because, like I said, this is a go-to for me. Very pippish. Really pippish. Extremely pippish. All the pips. All the pips all day. But I love this deck. It's clear and clean, communicates well with me. But I do wish it wasn't so bendy. I also wish it was slightly smaller, which isn't something I often say concerning tarot. But I think these cards would be just as effective if they were in a slightly smaller size. So don't hate the cardstock, but don't love it either. So that is the Golden Tarot by Liz Dean. Question number 13. What deck gives you the willies? I come in peace, I promise. For me, that's the Thoth. And it isn't that it's scary. It's not. The art is actually quite lovely. I was working with that card. That's why I had it flipped over. But yeah, so the images themselves aren't scary, and I felt this way ever since I saw this deck for the first time. There's something about it that just, kind of when your insides just coil a little bit and you're not quite sure why. This tarot does that for me. And again, not entirely sure why. And I felt this, I had that feeling even when I saw it the first time. And that was before I knew anything about Crowley and kind of, what his deal was and his backstory. The art is beautiful. Lady Frida Harris is extraordinary in how these pieces of art were executed. But I love the minors. The minors of the Thoth are just fab. I love them. But there's an undertone to this deck that has never quite sat right with me, which probably means I need to work with it more deeply, even more. But that is really cool. It really, really is. I don't know. It's more so in the majors than the minors or courts, I think, for me. Yeah, I don't know. It's a thing. But I own a copy, and I'm approaching it slowly and with a bit of caution and a bit of, I don't know, respect. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't know. This deck just feels, it's an approach with caution kind of thing for me. And I know this is a beloved deck and a go-to everyday reader for a lot of people. But for me, it's, we're slowly getting acquainted. So as far as giving me the willies, as far as the decks that I have, for me, it's this one. For a deck that I don't own, absolutely would be the Deviant Moon. Yeah, that's a thing. I don't know. So I don't own that deck, but that deck also gives me the willies. So yeah. That. Question number 14. What is your favorite deck for shadow work? Shadow work for me is one of those things that I don't intentionally sit down to do. It just happens spontaneously. Usually when I'm doing something very mundane, like showering or driving or washing the dishes or making tea. Things that are a bit shadowy for me tend to pop up when I'm engaging myself kind of in everyday tasks. So shadow work for me is not something I set down to do intentionally. And when I have tried that in the past, it's either been completely ineffective or it made things worse. And so for me, it's been more effective to engage with shadow a little bit more organically and spontaneously. That being said, there is a tarot that when I do use it, it tends to kind of prompt that a little more frequently than other tarots that I have. And that tarot for me is the Moonlight Tarot by Inessa Bondarenko. I got mine in the wooden box. This is an independently produced deck. The creator, is she from Ukraine? Eastern Europe. I think it's Ukraine. Not 100% sure. She has an Etsy shop. I will link it. I do not know if this deck is available at this moment in time, but I will provide the link and you can go take a peek. So yeah, this one kind of prompts that a little more regularly. I do use this deck sparingly, but when I feel called to work with it, I really feel called to work with it. And it actually sits at my writing desk. I have it on a shelf, so it kind of has a place of honor away from my other decks. Yeah. This tarot does a lot of kind of potent prompting for me. Not always, but a lot of the time. So that is the deck that sort of prompts me to do some shadow examination more than my others. I don't sit down to do it, but this one kind of pulls it out me a little more frequently. So that is, once again, the Moonlight Tarot by Inessa Bondarenko. Question 15, what is a deck you love in theory but not in practice? And this is another photo I will post because this is a deck I have rehomed, and that was the Herb Crafters Tarot. That deck is so pretty and really, really done very, very well, put together very thoughtfully. And I wanted to love it, but as a tarot, that one just didn't work for me. So I moved it along to someone who appreciates it greatly, and I'm thrilled that it's there. Question 16, what deck would you never use for someone else? And I don't read for others at this moment in time, but if I were, the first one that I thought of that would be like, no, they can't have that one, is my Hudes, my copy of the Hudes Tarot. This is now out of print. It was a US Games deck, but copies do pop up. I got mine on eBay for a really reasonable price. I saved for this deck for several months because I knew I wanted to try to find a copy, so I just tucked some money away every month for several months, and when I thought maybe I might have enough, I popped onto eBay to look, and there was a copy that was within my price range, and I was very grateful to get this one. But this deck and I went through it during the pandemic a little bit, and I bonded with it a lot. Another deck I could have put here would have been the Good Tarot. It was kind of a similar situation as with this one. But this one just has that little extra special something. I don't know if it's because it's out of print and I'm just putting that on it, but I don't know. For me, it's a special deck. And I also eventually saved up and acquired the out of print little companion book for it. So I have that as well, and I really like this book a lot. So that's my mine all mine sort of deck, and that's the Hudes Tarot by Susan Hudes. Question 17, what deck would you never use for yourself? And that would be this copy of the Secret Tarot, because technically this deck is actually not mine. I made an entire video about how this deck came into my possession, and I have it, I keep it, but I do not use it because it's not mine. But earlier this year, actually in January, I felt drawn to get my own copy of this deck, which I did, which is this one. This is an earlier printing. This is the newer printing. So the newer printing does not have the Los Scarabeo languages that were common in some of their older decks. So this copy right here, I will not read with. This copy is mine, and I have been getting to know it a little bit, and I will read with that one. It's a very interesting deck. I really wish there was some expanded material available somewhere for it, but there's just, at least from what I found, there's just the little white book. So it has very unique art. So yeah, the deck I would never read for myself with would be this printing of the Secret Tarot. Question 18, what deck could you not bring yourself to buy? I could probably do an entire video just on this question alone. I needed some chai. Because there are several. But the first sort of theme kind of that popped into my head, any of the fandom decks that are out there, like Game of Thrones or Star Trek or Stranger Things or Lord of the Rings, all these fandoms that I absolutely love, but I just do not feel the need to have a tarot for any of them. I'm not a collector of anything for any of those things. And for me, a tarot within a fandom for me would kind of narrow the scope of perspective for me. And it's just something, if you're a collector of those fandom things, I think a tarot is a really cool kind of collector item to bring in. But yeah, for me, it's just not a thing. Another deck I could put in here would be the Wild Unknown. That should be a deck that theoretically I would get along with really well. Very nature-based, heavy elemental undertones, but that's another one that I have just never been able to break down and buy. Or any of the Baba Studio decks, for that matter, with the exception of Tarot of Prague. That's the one Baba Studio deck that kind of caught my eye, and I have it on a list. Whether I'll get it or not, I don't know. I might go relook at it, actually, to see if it's something I'm still interested in, but none of the other Baba Studio decks ever held my attention, really, even for a second. So that was more than one deck, but it was a very loaded question for me. So I just kind of felt the need to throw those all in there. So those are decks I couldn't bring myself to buy. Question 19, what is your favorite Pip deck? For me, this question is like asking to choose a favorite child, because I have quite a few and I love Pip decks. Pip decks are my jam. But lately, the one that's just been kind of the it thing for me has been the Nouveau Tarot de Marseille by Gonzalo Eneas. This is an independently produced deck. The creator is from Spain. And the cards are, again, ginormous. But I make it work because I love them. Not a traditional Marseille, very modern. The minors are gorgeous. This is heavily influenced by Jodorowsky's take on the Marseille, which is probably why I gravitated toward it, because don't agree with everything Jodorowsky had to say, but his take on tarot I find kind of interesting. And that's probably why I gravitated toward this one. But yeah, this deck has just kind of been my jam lately. I really like this deck for smaller spreads, like just doing pairs or 3 cards, just because the cards are so large that visually it can kind of be a lot to take in if you do more than 3 or maybe 4. But I'm really liking it. I love this death card. It's so good. It's one of my favorites, and I love how he left the name off, because that was a nameless trump for a very long time. But yeah. I love it a lot. There is the box. The Nouveau Tarot de Marseille Gonzalo Eneas is my current favorite deck. Question 20. What deck slaps you with the truth? That's my Ancient Italian. This one never hesitates to just tell me how it is. It's just the way it reads for me. It's clear and punchy. And beautiful. The minors are so lovely. So it's a Soprafino and Avando inspired combo. And I just love it so much because it's always really clear for me. Short, sweet, and to the point. This is Lo Scarabeo deck. Ancient Italian for the truth slapper. Question 21. What's the deck that got away? The only thing for a tarot that I could think of for this one would have been the 4th edition of the Yonasayaos tarot with the purpley colored backs. The one that I mentioned in my video yesterday, I almost broke down and bought it, but the price was just so outrageous. But I really, really wanted that tarot, and that was going to be like the only deck I bought, like for the second half of, I think it was 2021. And I almost bit the bullet and went ahead and got it off of eBay, but something said, no, wait. And then a couple of months later, this one was announced. Not done, but announced. And I went ahead and got myself a copy. It is the 6th edition, and I have the medium size. It's that longer, taller, skinnier size. And my box is signed, which is really great. And the deck is the same. It just has these green backs. A part of me is ridiculous and still wants that 4th edition, and you know, it might happen someday, but I'm in no hurry because I have this one and I love this one. This is another tarot that I would consider maybe not using on other people just because it does feel very personal to me. And the Moonlight Tarot too, for that matter. I could see that as well. But yeah, so that's the 6th edition of the Yonasayaos, and it is a very, very great stand-in for the 4th edition, which I do not have. Not sure if I'll ever get it, but we'll see. And that is it. Those were the 21 tarot questions. Thank you, Lisa and Peggy, for putting this together. It's been fun. I've had a lot of fun watching the VRs, and I keep seeing new ones pop up pretty regularly. So I'm going to just keep watching those as they appear. So until my next video, take care and be well.